Gardaí Síochána have now launched a national appeal to help find 19-year-old girl Emma Townsend from County Kildare. Emma is described as being 5 feet, 5 inches tall with long blonde hair and blue eyes. Emma was last seen leaving her home with her friend during the afternoon of April 28th, wearing navy tights, denim shorts, a white shirt with flowers, and a headband with a daisy in it. She has now been missing for approximately 1 month. Gardaí have encouraged anyone with information to contact them immediately. It was that time of year again. I live in a small urban settlement along with roughly 20,000 other people. I'll try my best to keep the description brief. Barely anything unusual happens here. We have an unusually low crime rate and people are frequently very friendly. But I've never seen this as a bad thing. It's a very average town, you could say. A townhouse, a court, 1 hospital, a police station, a fire station, 4 primary schools, and 3 secondary schools, several religious buildings, 3 churches, 1 mosque, and 1 synagogue to be exact. An unusual low amount of clothes shops for a town that size. A lot of pubs, though. What can we say? We drink to get drunk. And several hotels, restaurants, banks, entertainment centers, etc. Driving through here, you wouldn't think much of this place. But there is one unexplainable presence we've all shared for many generations. My mother and father have had it ever since they moved here in 1987. Our next-door neighbor, who has lived here since she was born, has had it, which is the year 1949, I'm told. My best friend Stephen has had it. Actually, now that I think of it, everyone my age from my town naively posts about it on Facebook all the time. It's the tongue of the town for the youth, but our elders are never comfortable talking about. My mom and dad are happy to talk as well, but when I asked our neighbor for more details, she seemed almost panicky and shut the door in my face, all the while giving me a pathetic excuse as to not interact with me about it. This event all links back to that time of year. It starts out with the weather. The cold, fresh air of spring is suddenly replaced by this horrible, heavy, humid atmosphere. Even just going to the shop feels horrible and it's hard to breathe. Thunder is frequent at night time, but the weird part is there's no lightning or precipitation. It's just this loud rumbling from the depths of the sky. Next to fall victim are the animals. And I'm not just talking about the average house pets, like literally the cats, dogs, birds, ducks, rodents, all of them. Ducks don't stop quacking and birds fly in circles and become, well, idiots, basically. They start flying into cars, buildings, and trees. The same goes for people with tropical birds as pets, non-stop tweeting and flying into the rail of the cage. As for rodents, they dig holes in people's gardens, which is a nightmare for hardcore gardeners like my father. I have 2 dogs at home, 1 male and 1 female. The male becomes agitated and extremely paranoid. All day he will stare out the window with absolute concentration, almost like he's in a state of total focus, ears fully pricked up and shaking and whining all day long. I've seen mental patients that seem more at ease than him. Any little sound of movement from outside will make him go ape shit. My family and I decided it would be best not to disturb him during this time. Anytime he's not barking or whining, he's howling. This is quite odd because he's a Chihuahua. The Huskies and the German Shepherds do it as well, but it seems normal coming from them. My other dog now is a different story. For this period of time she sits in her basket solemnly sulking, breathing heavily. She barely even eat, which is very out of character for her. She looks completely miserable. I didn't even think this could happen to dogs. She's a Jack Russell and King Charles hybrid. And because she's a female, it's her nature to be calm and courteous. But this is just disturbing. You could rub her on her ears. She loves that. Put food right in front of her nose or call her name repeatedly, but nothing will work. It's like she doesn't exist for the week, like she's alive in another universe. Her body is functioning, but she's not there. If you think that I had it bad, You should hear about my friend Emma. She owns 2 cats, both female. This week is when the cats just turn into complete lunatics. It's so saddening and disheartening to see all the dead cats at the end of the week. Whatever is going on, it just turns the cats into bloodthirsty savages. Emma dreads this week every year. The cats are kept separate for a whole week, unsurprisingly. But it's not just other cats they attack. Emma's cats have been known to attack her as well. Oddly enough, though, this only occurs during the night. Over the last few years, she's complained of menacing meows coming from both ends of her bungalow. One night 2 years ago, she accidentally left her bedroom window open while the cat was in the back garden. She was awakened at 7:30 a.m. to a searing, stinging sensation shrouding her scrawled and scratched face. She didn't come to school for the rest of the week. She still has one scar below her left blue eye to this day. For everyone, the animals are what concern them the most. But for me, it's the dreams I have. I'm not the only one to get them. In fact, I'm pretty sure everyone in town gets them around this time. The only way to describe these dreams are strange. These are not just out of the blue kind of weird, though. The stories we have shared with each other about our dreams simply cannot be explained by the average human being. To put simply, they are bizarre. Nothing particularly wrong with them most of the time. In fact, these strange dreams are normally funny. A few I remember is my family trying to get a snake out of a house, even though there are no snakes in Ireland. Seems pretty normal. I'm not really sure why that one stands out. Another strange dream during this period have included me being the spectator at a boxing match between Anne Frank and a baked potato. A feeling of complete joy when I found the matching pairs for all my odd socks, and me being the captain of a submarine filled with 600 people. However, all the people were all just the closest members of my family, so 200 sisters, 200 mothers, and 200 fathers. Slightly odd, right? Those were the nice dreams. There were a few, however, that were a little more sinister. Every year during this week, I would have at least 2 nightmares, as far as I can remember. The most I've ever had is 3. One that stands out was me in the middle of nothing, literally surrounded by total blackness. Not darkness, blackness. Darkness is where there is an absence of light, but this place, it was just void of everything. Every time I looked down, up, back, forward, I just saw nothing. Like I was blind, like I was trapped in a big black box. I tried running, but it felt like I was just running standstill to keep up with my own sanity. I was terrified. After a while, though, I began to hear a faint sound. It only took me a few seconds to realize, but it was the old alarm siren used in Britain during World War II to signal that the Germans were about to attack. The sound always used to scare me, but for some odd reason, I felt a sense of relief when it came on during my dream, a feeling that I wasn't alone. That didn't last long when I suddenly heard the faint sound of a young child weeping, not the "I didn't get what I want and I'm going to throw a loud hissy fit" cry, but the child was experiencing genuine emotional pain for the first time and didn't know how to react, just a silent weep. It wasn't just that I could hear this, but I could also feel the pain too. It was like a mass mix of emotional torment and blinding confusion. The feeling of, I'm an innocent child. Why do I feel this way? As an impending nightmare was due for this week, I decided to set my alarm for 3 a.m. to wake me up halfway through it. I may not be able to sleep afterwards, but to be honest, I was just sick of that weak mental state felt the whole day after you experience a horrible nightmare. You never know. Maybe I get lucky this year and just have a lot of pleasant yet strange dreams. I set the alarm and read a book to help get me sleepy. It was as soon as I had closed my eyes that I had drifted off to sleep. Later that night, as expected, I gained consciousness in a dream. At first, I wasn't exactly sure what was going on, but judging by the feeling of dread in the dark, damned atmosphere, this wasn't going to be pretty. I was trapped in my parents' ensuite bathroom. The room was dark, and the sky outside was a very dark shade of purple. Out the window I could see no moon, but there were several stars shining very brightly. I had no clue why I was here. I could hear faint piano music coming from the attic. It wasn't like a hauntingly peaceful melody, though. It was like a 5-year-old child banging it randomly. However, whoever it was playing it in perfect rhythm and was only banging the high notes. To put it straight, they were playing utter gibberish. Yet they knew exactly what they were doing. I wasn't even sure how that made sense. This room is probably the smallest in my house, only behind the cloakroom and the heating press. I put my hand on the door handle, but I couldn't leave. Not that the door was locked or anything. The door might have or might not have been locked. I didn't even know. My brain wouldn't let me push down the handle. I had tried, but my arm wouldn't budge. I panicked and grabbed my right arm with my left and tried to push it down, but my arm just wouldn't move. I tried kicking the door and running into it. Nothing. I sighed and accepted that I was stuck here. I approached the other side of the room. I profoundly refused to even look at the mirror. I decided to just try waiting this out with that god-awful piano music playing in the background. Suddenly, without me even realizing, my head started twisting towards the mirror slowly. I tried my best to resist it, but just like with the handle, it was no use. Slowly but surely, my entire body slavishly drifted towards the position where I'd be posed perfectly in front of the mirror. I tried turning my head, closing my eyes, and looking the opposite direction, but I no longer had control. I was left staring at my perfectly lit up reflection for some time. I had a neutral pose upon my face, but I knew I was frightened out of my wits. What was going to happen? Why was this happening? When will it end? I had so many questions, but such little information. All I had was this dark room and myself, the banging piano music still playing over and over again. Without warning, it stopped. I paused all my thoughts because I couldn't control my body. There was this maddening silence for what felt like the longest minutes of my life. Usually in total silence, the human mind will start making you hear things, but not this time. Total lack of sound. My body posed perfectly still, but in my own head, I was completely freaking out. And then it started out of nothing, completely deafening me, a shrieking, beeping noise. It sounded like a phone? My phone. My alarm. My alarm was going off, but I wasn't waking up. I continued to stare at my own terrifying reflection with the somewhat relieving sound of the alarm perforating my dream world eardrum. The alarm getting louder and louder and louder. The piano music started again, blending in with the alarm's beeping. That's when my head started tilting, the same expression on my face in plain sight on the mirror, but my head tilting ever so slowly to the left. With every bang of the piano, my head would move the tiniest bit, but the rest of my body stayed perfectly still. All I could do was watch until it got to the point where my head was bent down at an impossible angle to even still be alive. My head and neck hung loosely from my shoulders, still with the same blank expression, like nothing was happening. Then that changed too. A demented smile started to grow on my face. The piano banging from the attic started to speed up as the alarm music started to become twisted, switching back and forth from playing normally to backwards, and the volume and pitch started to become distorted, playing at different volume ranges. The smile kept growing and growing until you could see even my wisdom teeth. My hazel eyes opened wider and wider and wider as my pupils swelled up my entire iris. Blood started to drip from the sides of my mouth as the smile started growing beyond my cheeks. The piano music no longer had rhythm or was professionally played. It just sounded like somebody repeatedly smacking their head off the keys as high and low notes were going off, sharp notes clashing with flat ones. My entirely black iris started to shake in my eyes as blood rushed down from both eyes, and the once enormous smile on my face was now a gaping hole in my head as my teeth fell out one by one. The black iris in both eyes shaking furiously out of control. I suddenly froze. Everything froze. The music froze. What now? I don't have an attic. I don't have a piano. I woke up screaming, as if I had just been stabbed in the leg. Today was not going to be a good day. I opened the window to get a breath of fresh air, forgetting the air was still humid and horribly warm. No wind whatsoever. I walked downstairs to get some food. My family were all acting normally, nothing unusual going on between them. I checked my phone to see the time. The thought of even looking at that thing only sent shivers down my spine. I checked to see if anything was off. One new text from Emma. That was expected. I usually do. My withering senses, however, were new. I was becoming paranoid all of a sudden. This is the first year this has happened. Emma had texted me asking what time I was getting the bus to college. It was things like this morning, which I was extremely grateful for. My ordinary, boring life. It had settled me down from my traumatizing night. It had been 7 days now. I was now just waiting for the next few days to just fuck off. I enjoyed my average daily weekday walk down to the bus stop, only with just one bit of thunder startling me on my way. I approached Emma waiting for me at the stop, wearing her usual headband with a daisy attached to it. She was a bit of a hippie. She was fiddling with her long blonde hair, staring into the distance. She looked like she had something bothering her. I could tell by her facial expression. I had known her for 10 years, and these were always her actions when there was something making her feel uncomfortable or upset. "Hey, what's up?" I asked. "Hey, the usual. And you?" she replied. "Yep, definitely something wrong." Usually her response would be sarcastic, witty, or teasing, often insulting me. That's what I loved about her. One of the best personalities that I knew. "Are you sure?" I inquired. "You seem a little off," I admitted. "Oh, it's just that time of year again, you know. Had a pretty messed up dream last night," she said. "Ha, you're not the only one," I said. "I had an awful dream last night." "Yeah, but you deserve one though, shithead," she said with a cheeky little smile. "Ah, there she is." I giggled it off. "What was your dream about anyway?" "No way I'm talking about mine. Fuck." "You pussy," she exclaimed. Mine was freaky as fuck, though. I dreamt I was locked in this creepy-ass attic playing a piano, and I just could not stop, no matter how hard I tried. My face dropped. There was like a bunch of other weird crap as well, like I kept hearing this alarm going off. I interrupted immediately with a pose of despair. Her face turned from bright and bubbly to empty and frightened. "Huh? How did you... What?" she mumbled while mildly flailing her arms towards her head in disbelief. All I could do was watch open mouth while Emma was close to breaking down in panic. I grabbed her arm and confronted her, trying my very best to calm her down. Usually I was never good at these kinds of things, but Emma always appreciated the effort of people comforting one another. Her breathing was heavy, and a rare look of dread had overcome her usually quirky face. We stared at each other for a few long seconds, trying to catch up with reality. For a brief moment, I had forgotten all about it. I was expecting this usual town to just pass on as it always did. Until now. There was something menacing about all this. Why does it only happen here? My cousins in the neighboring town never experienced it. Why the terror? Why all the animal chaos? Scores needed to be settled. Somebody knows something. "We need to talk," I told her. No response. That was a yes. She knew something. It was mutually agreed that we would both take the day off to discuss plans. The story explained for this town. It's just the drastic change in weather causing it all, but that can't be it. I know that's not it. This town is brainwashed and has been for years now. My neighbor was hiding a secret from me, a secret which clearly made her feel at unease. What had her so agitated at this time of year? Why did she change the subject and freak out any time I brought it up? I was just so goddamn sick of just being given stupid, insincere, vague slander for answers all the time. Well, no more. After I brought Emma home and spent about an hour calming her down, we set out to my neighbor's residence. Emma hated anything to do with the supernatural or the paranormal. She acts all tough around most people about it, but I can see right past it and she knows it. We won't watch any horror movie that doesn't have any logic behind it, always giving some abysmal excuse to everybody, while at the same time texting me complaining why we have to watch such filth. Even just silly little coincidences could leave her rocking back and forth in extreme paranoia for the guts of an hour. I couldn't even imagine how she was dealing with this right now. My neighbor had always been a very introverted person. I've been her neighbor for 14 years, and for as long as I can remember, every single night, she has had the blinds pulled in every single window on her house. Anytime I wave at her in the street or stop by to say hello, it was like she never had any time for me. She has one daughter who visited her quite frequently, and every week a group of other elders visited her house for approximately an hour, although sometimes they could be up there for up to 4 hours. The longest they've been there is 4 days, if I recall correctly. These elders I also recognized from the town. There were always 4 regulars there for every single meeting. Rain, wind, or shine, they'll be there. The most I've ever seen is well over 20. This odd behavior has always intrigued me. The house itself looks like any other house on my road. It's clean, painted white, and has a well-kept garden and a shed. Nothing out of the ordinary there, then, I suppose. As we approached her house, we noticed the absence of one silver Mercedes. That was the signal for the go-ahead then. Emma and I decided it would be best to enter her house from my garden, so we ventured through my house, out the conservatory door, and peeked through her kitchen window and the dining room door which led into the garden. No sign of her. I hopped over the fence and landed on the grass, only to be met with a tongue-biting scrunch sound against my shoe. I leaned over and brushed my hand through what I had discovered was fake grass? Why wouldn't my neighbor have a plastic grass lawn? Come to think of it, she has no grass or plants on her front garden either. It's made entirely of pebbles and stone. Emma then hopped over the peeling green fence and landed on the so-called grass. I'd stretched my hand out and rubbed all her flowers, trees, and the bushes. These were all artificial as well. I honestly didn't know what to make of this. I never noticed this before. It all looked so real. To have your garden reshaped like this must have cost her an absolute fortune. Emma stared at me with a concerned perplexity. We spaced out for a while, trying to make out what this was all about. We agreed to keep going before she got home. She ran ahead of me and looked through both windows, and that's when I noticed something horrifying. The daisy in Emma's headband. It was curling up. All the petals turning brown in seconds, the stem turning into a disgusting, murky, dry yellow color. Sure, the daisy was already dead, but rotting just as soon as we get into a synthetic garden and at that rate? I thought it was best not to say anything. Emma jerked on the door. Nothing. We tried all the windows on the side and back of the house. All locked. That's when Emma took a clip from her hair and started twisting and turning it into a pick lock. She stuck it into the keyhole and fiddled it around for a few seconds before we heard the victorious click of the lock giving in to our demands. Crafty little flower. We were in. Emma crept inside and instantly turned around to me with a wrinkled-up facial expression. As soon as I set foot in the house, I knew what she was signaling. The smell. It was just the overwhelming smell of tar. This house looked like the ordinary suburban 80s house, but the inside looked like an 1800s cottage. Her kitchen table was just a large slab of marble. I desperately looked around for a light switch, except there were no lights. I looked around one more time. All candles and firelit lamps. No plugged sockets could be seen. The only light coming from outside, and seeing that as there's no sun, the atmosphere in here was absolutely miserable. I checked around one last time. There was absolutely no electricity at all. Candles decorated the counters. Stoves and pots scattered everywhere too. This was a total clash to the synthetic garden within eye shot of us both. The slight headache that all the colors of the garden had given me was being unsettlingly soothed by the plainness of this residence. With hesitation, we continued on to explore the rest of the house. The hallway was laid out pretty similarly to the kitchen and dining room. No lights, stone walls, and creaky wooden floors. You would expect this place to be freezing, but it was much warmer than the kitchen. The smell of tar was now much stronger, and Em and I were finding it very difficult to breathe. As we progressed through here, my vision started to blur, and my pace started to stutter. I resorted to a clumsy, disoriented mess within a rapid space of time, struggling to make sense of any of the situation. Suddenly there was an unexpected thud. I half-heartedly hauled my heavy head to the source of the soaring sound. After half a second of tensing my focus, I saw that Emma had lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground like a rag doll. After the realization, I made my best effort to struggle over to her assistance. For now, this needed to wait. We both needed to leave. I limped to my best efforts over to her body lying in a heap on the dark, damaged floors. I placed my left hand on her warm left arm and grabbed her right shoulder with my right arm. I hoisted her up as quickly as possible as my vision started to fade into darkness, merging objects into indistinguishable blobs. I slowly stumbled towards what I made out to be the front door. I placed my hand on the knob and twisted it to only confirm my worst fears. Locked. I literally had seconds of energy left. It would have taken a miracle for me to make it back out to the backyard before I passed out. With nothing to lose, I headed for the hallway door leading back into the kitchen. As I was leaving the main part of the hall, something had caught my eye. It was where the stairs were supposed to be. It was just 2 doors. I paused and gazed over with all the attention I had left in my brain. Suddenly fearing for my safety, I thrashed towards the exit with the mightiest effort I could afford. I could never put Emma in danger like this. I would never forgive myself if something ever happened to her on my hands. On my watch, I was determined not to let anything happen to my best friend in the world. It was now or never. I was resolute to just get out of here and fast. And then, everything went black.